It is my honor and privilege.
The stars are coming out for the Democratic National Convention this week. And they're delivering the same message. Donald Trump must be voted out of office.
Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country.
We must come together, defeat Donald Trump, and elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as our next president and vice president.
To do that, the party's immediate priority has become the protection of the Postal Service. They want to preserve people's ability to vote by mail, especially during a pandemic.
What this president's trying to do with the Postal Service is undermine our confidence in vote by mail. That's unconscionable. I think it's illegal, and it is really hurting people.
The Trump administration has blocked $25 billion in emergency funding for the Postal Service. Democrats are looking to reverse that decision and also want to give it an additional $3.6 billion in cash. It's all meant to help the agency deal with an expected surge in mail-in ballots in November, so people can still vote while keeping themselves safe from COVID-19. Twice as many Americans are expected to post their votes this year than in 2016. But without citing any evidence, the White House has said mail-in ballots could lead to widespread voter fraud.
This universal mail-in is a very dangerous thing. It's fraught with fraud and every other thing that can happen, and we have to be very, very careful.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat, has called the House of Representatives back into session from its summer recess to give the Postal Service the money it needs. But that funding is part of a Democratic stimulus proposal worth $3 trillion, a number that Republicans say is way too high. Unless Pelosi and company are willing to compromise, any bill they pass will likely be stamped out in the Republican-controlled Senate. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Well, for more, let's hear from Kathryn Solon in Arizona. She's a member-elect of the Democratic National Committee, representing Democrats abroad. Welcome back to the program, Kathryn. Now, let's start with the big question first. Do you believe Donald Trump is defunding the US Postal Service effectively to skew the results of the November presidential election?
Oscar, thank you first for having me back and for getting the perspective of overseas Americans. But absolutely, Tom Perez had it right, the chair of the Democratic Party, who you had on a couple of minutes ago. He mentioned that Donald Trump is trying to undermine the confidence in mail-in voting. No, really, beyond that, he is trying to stop people from voting by mail. This election comes down to turnout. This is going to be a turnout election. The only way he can win is if the vote is suppressed, if fewer numbers of people are voting. If everybody is voting, then he has a much less of a chance to win. So this is not an economic issue. It's not a reorganizational, bureaucratic issue. This is voter suppression. This is trying to stop people from voting. And Donald Trump said that himself last week. Said he wasn't going to offer more to the US postal system because he doesn't believe in mail-in ballots, which is actually quite funny since he's voted by mail in many of the past elections. But another example of Donald Trump saying one thing and doing another.
Yes, now one of Donald Trump's main arguments against mail-in voting is that I guess it could be subject to widespread fraud. As someone who represents Democrats abroad and the thousands of US citizens who do vote by mail from around the world, have you seen any evidence of fraud?
Yeah, you know, the mail system and voting by mail is really important to people in the US, but it's incredibly critical to overseas voters. And we are 6.5 million Americans who can vote overseas. About half of the states require our ballots to be returned by postal mail. The other half let us return by email or fax. So it's absolutely critical that the mail system work for overseas voters to be able to vote. Democrats abroad is doing everything we can to help support the postal system. We have been writing emails, writing letters. We hope they get there. to governors of the states who can establish these laws in their state, allowing the ballots to come back by mail or by email. We have been sending thousands of tweets. So we're doing everything that we can to make sure that people in the U.S. know the importance of the mail system for overseas voters.
Now, the US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has recalled the Congress in order to vote for a bill to, I guess, reinstate more funding from the US Postal Service. Are you hopeful that perhaps the result of that vote will see the Postal Service receive the billions that it needs in order to expand mail-in voting?
Yeah, well, here is Speaker Pelosi not abdicating her responsibility, and the U.S. House of Representatives coming back to deal with this really critical issue. On Saturday, they're going to vote. Most likely, they will pass the Delivering for Americans Act, and it will fund the post office, and it will make sure that none of these changes that are supposed to slow delivery and remove important sorting equipment, that none of that happens until at least January, until after the election. I really should add as well that any overseas voters can go to votefromabroad.org. It's the website hanging behind me, to find out about voting in their state, to find out if they need to return their ballot by mail or if they can return it by email. So again, it's votefromabroad.org. And also I would add that election law in the U.S., funnily enough, almost all of it is state law. So things vary state by state. So overseas voters, we've got the information for your state at votefromabroad.org.
Okay, well, the Democrats, as we know, or the Congress, I should say, is due to vote on this bill for the US Postal Service on Saturday. We'll keep an eye on that. Kathryn Solon from the Democratic National Committee, thank you again for joining us on the program.